Hey, this is Gerd Handel, and welcome to the Inner Light Project. This show is for anyone who's wanting to lead a happier, healthier, and enlightened life. Create more self-love, inject more joy and abundance into their daily life. Join me for inspiring interviews and spiritual topics so you can shine your inner light. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Inner Light Project. My name is Gerd Handel and today I have a beautiful soul who is helping conscious women to live unapologetically. She is really helping women to really come back home to themselves and express themselves to the fullest truth, their wisdom, their highest destiny. And again, I think that is so important. As women, we have this knowledge, this wisdom, this intuition, we have this beautiful guidance from within, and when we let her flow, she just beautifully, magically appears. The way she walks, the way she talks, the way she flows, it's just so beautiful. And I think as women, we've been conditioned to think in a very masculine way growing up, and we were told from society, cultural, ancestral, family, how to act, think or behave. You know, we've got to be a man in the working world, but we've got to be a woman at home, and so much confusion growing up. And I think it's so important when we can reach that highest expression and truth of ourselves, then we really are in our highest destiny. Jennifer Spor is the host of Path of the Awakened Heart podcast. She is a spiritual advisor and Akashic Record trauma-informed master consultant. And she's here on the show to really talk about her journey, what she's been through, and how she's helping so many women to really come back to their highest destiny. Hi Jennifer, I'm grateful to have you on the show and thank you for joining us today.
Yes, thank you. I'm so excited to be connected with you and to chat today.
Oh, bless you. It was so interesting reading your story about your journey. I always find that it's so amazing how when we don't listen to the universe will force us into the plan that we're meant to lead. But we think we have another plan, but actually there is a greater plan than what we know.
Yes, I've found that to be true as well. I laugh about it, because it's like you got to have a sense of humor as well.
Oh God, 100%. So could you tell us what your life was like before you became an Akashic Record consultant?
Yeah, and yes, I am an Akashic Records master consultant, and I also serve as like a spiritual guide and advisor for other conscious women as well. There's even several iterations of my journey before I started studying the Akashic Records, but to start really at the beginning with, which I would say was the first initial big catalyzer of changing my life. Before I started my business, I actually had a well-established career in the retail industry. I worked in the retail industry for 23, 24 years, and like so many other people, right, in the world, I was taught to believe that there was this particular idea of what success looked like for us, right? And so basically I checked all those boxes off the list. I started working in retail when I was 19, and I actually really loved it for a long time because in retrospect, I realized that I was dating, my destiny, or like dating my purpose in a lot of ways, but not fully committed to it, meaning that I've always been a really great guide and leader for people, but I was just doing it in retail in a different way than what I'm doing now. And so anyway, I was really successful in that career and checked all those boxes off the list of what society teaches us it means, it has meant traditionally to achieve success, and reached a place in my life where I was no longer feeling challenged or like I was making much of a difference anymore. And that's really when I like to say the fog started to lift. So for the first time, really in many years in my adult life, I started wondering, what's next for me, because I wasn't feeling fulfilled anymore, despite having all those feelings, I chose not to take action at the time to make any major career changes because I was fearful. Essentially, a lot of fear popped up around, how would I change careers and continue living the same lifestyle and keep my house and all of those things, right? Money and all of the stuff. So I chose not to take action. What I did do at that time, however, was embark on a journey to getting to know myself at a deeper level, to rediscover essentially, who I was, what my values were, and tapping back into spiritual gifts that I'd had my entire life, but essentially had been shut down for the most part. So I did start doing that, and it was really about a year and a half to 2 years later is when I actually started taking action to look at changing careers, because my mother at the time had been diagnosed with terminal cancer. And what happened was I, was continuing to resist the change that was inevitable. And I, at the time, was flying back and forth a lot because I was living in the US on the opposite end of the country from where my mom was. So I was flying back and forth a lot to try to spend time with her and with my family. And there was this defining moment that I remember as clearly as if it were yesterday. I was sitting by my mom's bedside, and this was literally just a few days before she transitioned. And my work phone started ringing and blowing up with messages, and I found myself faced with yet another opportunity to choose, right? To choose to be present to something that I was no longer passionate about, and to be present to an issue that, was happening that could have been prevented, or to be present with my mom, knowing that that was probably going to be the last time I would interact with her on this earth plane, in this life. And so it was that moment. That was the moment that I decided that I had no idea the path that was ahead. And it didn't matter. My courage exceeded my fear in that moment. And that was the moment that I made the decision that I was going to change my life. And that in of itself was a transitional period, right? Because I was in a high level leadership position, and what ended up happening is I voluntarily stepped down from my career. And I, much like the lyrics of a country song, I like to say, like, I packed up my car, I rented out my house in New Jersey, packed up my car, and headed out west. I drove across the country by myself, back to Idaho, where I grew up, and that was the beginning. That was the beginning of the new chapter. And it wasn't actually, I didn't know that I was going to become an entrepreneur, and I didn't know that I was going to do the work that I'm doing today right away. I literally made a leap of faith. I was consulting for a little while, to pay the bills. And it was during that process of spiritual awakening that I realized the work that I was being called to, which is what I do today. And what happened was I was going through this awakening, and I had invested, in working with coaches and therapists and healers and all of that. And I realized that I was hard pressed at the time to find someone who could support me in not only relating to what I was going through, right, but also someone who could support me in integrating those new awarenesses into my life, into manifesting that new version of myself. And that was the moment that I realized I was being called to this work to help other people, other people mostly who are entrepreneurs, to live from the deepest knowing of who they are and how they're here to contribute. And so, yeah, I made the path.
Wow, that's amazing. And it's shocking that it had to take, for your mum's health, for you to say, actually, I'm done, you know, and it shouldn't be like that, right? We should always have the choice to go to our loved ones, and you know, people should be more understanding. But unfortunately, our world is getting more and more less compassionate as it goes along. But you know, I really relate with what you're saying. So I used to be a journalist, and my whole life was, I'm going to be a health journalist, and that's it. And I was working in this office job, just switching up for a little bit, as a financial publisher, and I collapsed in the office. And that was kind of like the first realization. But I was like, oh no, it's fine. I'll leave in 3 months' time, and you know, it'll all be fine. And it's funny how the universe works. It took 3 weeks, and I ended up being made redundant and walked out. And I had a cancer scare, and actually for me, it was my cancer scare that woke me up. And I was like, wow, it's time to come back home to myself. But again, it's a weird transition. So I don't know if it was something similar with yourself, but for me, I was sat in the hospital, you know, feeling sorry for myself. What have I done to deserve this? Why is everything going wrong? And I heard a voice saying, you created this. And I looked around the room and nobody was there. And I was like, what? It's all in my head. And then I got my results, and they'd said they'd misdiagnosed me, and I ran out crying out of the hospital, and I heard the words, it's time to heal. And that was the shift that I just went on this journey. Like yourself, I never imagined being a coach. I did, you know, there was no way that I planned a whole life of being a coach, but it led me on the journey of the unknown, like yourself. And I realized the power of surrendering. When we surrender, there is a greater plan that's out there for us.
Absolutely, yes. When we surrender and essentially remembering our divinity, our connection to God and to our origin, right? Of who we really are. We are these amazing beings, these light beings that have a soul. We're having this human experience, and we are powerful creators of our reality. And when we tap into remembering that and being intentional about navigating that, it changes everything in the most amazing way.
Yeah, 100%. And, you know, so you went on this journey, you packed everything up. Then what happened? What was your next stage?
Yeah, so I moved, right? I drove across the country through my, after my move, you know, from New Jersey back to Idaho. It was during that time of awakening and transition that I realized what I was being called to in terms of my work. And then I, you know, set an intention to become an entrepreneur. And I started an entirely new path. And lots of people, you know, everybody's path is unique. And some people stay in their careers and transition over time into their business. Me, I came up with a plan. I committed to a date, and I maintained that. So there was a date for me that I had decided, that's it. You know, this is the date that I'm taking the leap. And I came up with a plan that, you know, everything I needed to do, right? Finances and whatever training I wanted to receive and who I was serving and all of that. I mapped it all out, and then I did it. You know, I remember to this day, you know, June 10th, 2016 was the last day that I worked for anyone else.
Wow. Wow.
And that was it.
I love it. I really love it. And I'm so proud of you for just taking that leap of faith and saying, you know what, I'm going to build a life that feels aligned with me. And I find it so interesting as women, we've been sold this trap idea of, oh, you need to be like in this alpha energy and work all these hours and push and, you know, compete. But actually, that's not life, you know. And I feel that's why so many women are not aligning with their highest path.
Yes, absolutely. We've lived in a society that has been very heavily influenced in the masculine. And yes, there's an awakening to the divine feminine, which the divine feminine really represents the intuitive and more of the creative side of our being, which is more of the true essence of who we are. And that's not to say that the masculine doesn't have a purpose as well. It's just that up to this point, we've been living very imbalanced. And ascension and evolution, right, is about attaining balance and harmonization. And the sacred masculine, right, the sacred masculine acts in flow, and it acts in devotion to the divine feminine.
Yeah, so true. And I know you're aware of this, but like again, it's like the priestess energy, isn't it? That we've all got this priestess energy, but again, it's almost like we've forgotten it because generations have had to hide who their true power and who they're meant to be in this world.
Absolutely, yes. There's very deep ancestral and societal programming around that we need to look outside of ourselves, for who we are and for the answers. And all of the answers reside truly within us at a soul level. And that's, I've trained in a lot of different modalities and ways of being of service. But in my experience, in all my years of experience, I found the Akashic Records to be one of the most direct paths for people to get in touch with the true essence of who they are, because the Akashic Records are your soul records. They're the storehouse for all of your soul's experiences and all of the answers to who you are.
Can you tell us about Akashic Records? Because I know some people won't know what that is.
Yeah, so again, the put in very simple terms, right? The Akashic Records are like the library for your soul, but they are a limitless library, because as a soul, this experience that we're having right now in this physical reality is just one aspect of our being. We exist simultaneously, right? There are limitless dimensions of even the current aspect of ourselves that exist, and we've had multiple lifetimes. We speak in the context a lot of past, present, and future. So you've had tons of past lifetimes, and there are future potential lifetimes that exist for you. But beyond that, beyond this earth plane, is where the Akashic Records exist in the field of the Akasha, and where time does not exist. Right. And that is where all of your soul's experiences are essentially where they reside, in that field of consciousness. For those who follow the Bible or have read the Bible, there's a reference to the Akashic Records in the Bible. It's referenced as the book of life, right? So the Akashic Records are just all of your life's experiences, all of your emotions, all of your beliefs, any and all events, any and all aspects of you all reside in that space.
Wow, that's so fascinating.
Yeah, it's fascinating and super expansive, right? And it can be kind of mind-blowing at first, like even if you're not that familiar with the Akashic Records. But what it comes down to is knowing that there is this deeper part of you at a soul level that you can learn how to access, right? So, you can work with people who are Akashic Records consultants who can tap into your records with your permission, right? And serve as a channel, which I do with some clients, right? To give you all of those answers and that healing and insight. Oh, you can also learn how to access them for yourself. I mean, everybody has the ability to do that if they so choose. I often like to, daydream about, what would our world be like if all of the 8 billion humans who are here had access to their Akashic records and lived from their soul every day, imagine what our world would be like.
Wow. Wow. That's really powerful.
It is. Yeah.
I've always found Akashic Records really interesting and fascinating, but again, it's always been quite confusing. So that's what I was like, let's just share what it is for our client and for the audience, because it just sounds so like, whoa, like what is that? It sounds very mysterious.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's really tapping in, your Akashic records are an aspect of you, right? At a soul level. So it's really just tapping into higher consciousness.
It's beautiful. Can you tell us how you're helping women to live more of a soul-led life?
Yeah, so a lot of the women that I attract, that I work with are women similar to you and I who are on a path less traveled, right? Because we are living in a time where literally the societal structures that have been in place are crumbling. We can see that happening with all of the upheaval and conflict all around us. And so there are many women who, and men as well, but many women who are being called to create something entirely new, something that involves their own wisdom and their own talents and gifts, right? That is serving in supporting the collective to adapt to a higher consciousness way of living and being. So I work with a lot of people who are innovators, people who are looking to live from the inside out, looking to live from their soul's call to how they are feeling called to show up in the world. And so I work with these women in supporting them to get really clear on that vision and take action to make that transition to bring to manifest what that is for them, right? And as we know, making the leap is a big step. Making the leap to make the decision that whatever you're being called to is happening is a big step. But what is just as big a part of the journey is the actions that you take to make that transition. Because as I'm sure you know too, right? It's like as we start showing up integrated into that higher consciousness version of us, lots of things change in our life, right? Because our physical reality represents the past, basically. And so sometimes relationships will change, sometimes our values change, sometimes our careers change. We start businesses, or as an entrepreneur, you're being called to expand or pivot or change directions in your work, and that is what I support these women in doing, in bringing to life.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, it's so fascinating how our society has changed. Like I can see it, and it's kind of one of the reasons why I do the work that I do. I help my clients peel off the emotional, the financial, the spiritual, the ancestral, cultural layers, because as women, we've had so much baggage put on us from the moment, not from the moment we were born, through generational patternings from our families, from our mums and our grandmas, our great grandmas. We are taking on all these heavy burdens, and then when we come into this world, it's like, whoa, it's so serious. So we don't know how to trust ourselves, and like you said, the soul-led way. And then when we start to peel off those layers and come back home to ourselves, then we actually know how powerful we truly are and how much gifts and talent that we have in this world.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm feeling guided, to emphasize that it's about living a soul-led life, but it's not just about living from your soul or living from your human self. You're a soul having a human experience. So it's about learning how to live from that deeper guidance, but balanced and fully present and grounded in your human experience here on this earth.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, that's so true. Wow. So what are your tips for somebody who wants to start a soul-led life, but they don't really know where to start?
Yeah, so, your listeners are likely already feeling called to something, right? The reason why a lot of people don't take action is because there's fear around how to do that. And so, the first thing that if my clients aren't already into, that I teach them about, is the importance of creating space just to be with yourself, right? Because again, there's so much ancestral and societal programming in that we always have to be doing something in order to accomplish something.
Yeah.
And it's much more productive to learn how to create space and get comfortable just being with yourself, because what you're doing is opening the gateway to further clarity just from creating that space to be with yourself. And so meditation is a great way to do that. And it's a lot like building a muscle. It's important to prioritize creating that space for yourself every day. For me, I've been creating space 7 days a week for about 15 years in meditation. It's something that in my own life I've decided is non-negotiable. And so that's another tip in of itself, is getting intentional about how you're going to live your life day to day, right? So deciding for yourself what is non-negotiable for you. So whether it's meditation, exercise, body movement is another really important one. And just deciding for your life, what are your must-haves and what are you unavailable for compromising on, and standing in that and how you live your day to day really does have a huge influence in what you're able to create, for your life. So those are two tips right there. Another one is, I did reference exercise, and so making sure that whatever movement feels good for you, that you're implementing that in your day to day as well, because as a soul having a human experience, the energy has to move, right? You have to move ideas and thoughts and feelings onto the physical plane, and regular body movement and exercise is really important to help you anchor that in, essentially.
Oh, beautiful.
Those would be my top tips, right? And that applies to whatever it is that you're feeling called to for your unique path. I mean, in saying that just now, I would also add, being clear, getting clear in what you want to create, right? For intentionally create for your life, and journaling, or just guided meditation is super helpful for that, because manifestation happens from clear energy and clear intention.
That is so true. And then you're able to
Yeah.
tap in quicker. I know 100% what you mean. You're able to tap in quicker to what you're here to birth into the world.
Yes, absolutely. And so then sometimes, right, going from that point to manifesting what you want to create can feel easier said than done. And that's when it's always beneficial to reach out for support, to know that you're not on the journey alone. And whether that's, reaching out to you for support, reaching out to me or any other healer or coach or person that your listeners feel aligned with reaching out to for that support, right? Friends and family can be great in certain capacities for supporting us, because many of them love us unconditionally. However, that doesn't automatically mean that they're the highest aligned support for you to have in certain instances, especially when you are an innovator and you're creating a new path for yourself, right? It's important to have someone, whether it's a coach or a therapist or someone who can hold that space for you to step into what you want to create without any bias. Does that make sense?
Oh, 100%. 100%.
Yeah.
You need somebody that's done their own inner work to help you, because they're not able to help then guide you from the highest self. They will then be inflicting their own wounds and their own issues onto you, which is not what you need.
Yeah. Our loved ones, like, yeah, they often, may even discourage us from taking those leaps, right? Because the truth is, you can't avoid risk in living a soul-led life. You have to be willing to take that leap without knowing the path ahead. And that goes back to that programming that we've talked about, how we're trained to believe that the answers are outside of ourselves, or that we have to know the whole path ahead before we leap. And that is actually the complete opposite of who we are as powerful creators. It starts with an idea, right? Something we're being called to, our imagination, and then we anchor that onto the physical plane.
Oh, I love that. That's so true. 100%. Oh, beautiful. And what are you most grateful for?
Wow, you know what? I am most grateful for where I'm at today, right now, in this now moment.
Oh, I love that. And what shines your inner light?
Yeah, what shines my inner light? There are a lot of things. One of the things that lights me up the most is seeing that visible shift when someone realizes how powerful they are and reclaims that.
Oh, that is the biggest gift. I absolutely love that as well. When you see them from where they are at the beginning journey, and then where they are at the end, and they're just so much in their feminine and their flow, and they're just living their life the way they want. It's just, it's so beautiful to see.
Yes, and I also just feel so grateful to be a part of that, to witness that.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Jennifer, for sharing your wisdom, and for taking that calling and coming back home to yourself, and taking that journey and the leap of faith to help so many other women to come back home to their self as well.
Oh, thank you. I just am super honored and just really excited.
Unfortunately, that's the end of the show. Before I leave, I want to leave you with this quote. If outside validation is your only source of nourishment, you will hunger for the rest of your life. That's a quote by Warrior Goddess Training. Take care, my sisters. Bye. For more information about the show, visit www.gerdshandel.com. And remember, stay happy, stay healthy, stay lit.